The day the Luminars arrived changed everything. Their ships appeared suddenly, hanging in the sky like perfect silver teardrops. They came without warning, without noise, without the chaos people expected from first contact. One moment the skies were empty, the next they were there. 7 massive vessels positioned above major cities across Earth. Captain Morgan Reed watched the main view screen from the bridge of the UES Defiant. His ship, humanity's newest and most advanced warship, seemed suddenly small and primitive. "Orders, sir?" asked his first officer, Tom Wells. Reed's jaw tightened. "Maintain position. Keep weapons systems ready but not targeted." The world's governments scrambled to respond. Emergency broadcasts interrupted regular programming. Military forces worldwide went on high alert. For 6 hours, the alien ships simply waited, silent and still. Then they spoke. The message came simultaneously to every communication device on the planet, in perfect local languages. The voice was calm, warm, almost musical. "People of Earth, we are the Luminars. We come in peace and with great purpose. We have watched your development for centuries, and the time has come to welcome you into the greater community of sentient beings. We offer knowledge, healing, and guidance. We have helped 1,000 worlds reach their full potential. Now we offer the same to you." On the Defiant, Reed frowned. "They sound too perfect," he muttered. "Nobody's that nice without wanting something." The United Nations called an emergency session. Leaders from every nation gathered virtually as the Luminars sent representatives to address them. Their physical forms were breathtaking. Tall, slender beings with skin that seemed to glow from within, shifting between gold and silver. Their movements were graceful, their voices melodious. They spoke of sharing technology that would end disease, hunger, and energy shortages. They promised to guide humanity to its ascension. Most people welcomed them with open arms. Why wouldn't they? The Luminars were everything humanity had hoped for in alien contact. Advanced, peaceful, generous. But Reed didn't trust them. 20 years in space had taught him that nothing came without a price. When the president ordered all military vessels to stand down as a show of good faith, Reed reluctantly complied. His crew watched as the Defiant's weapon systems were powered down. "Sir, do you really think that's wise?" Wells asked quietly. Reed's eyes never left the screen showing the nearest Luminar vessel. "It's not about what I think anymore, Tom. It's about following orders." 3 days after their arrival, the Luminars demonstrated their power. When a nervous general in one country launched missiles at the ship hovering above his capital, the Luminars didn't even move. The missiles simply stopped. They hung in the air for a moment, then dissolved into harmless particles that rained down like golden dust. The message was clear. Resistance was pointless. The Luminars began sharing their technology. Medical devices that could heal almost any injury or disease. Energy generators that pulled power from seemingly nowhere. Food production systems that could feed millions from minimal resources. It was everything they had promised. Leaders worldwide signed treaties with the Luminars, accepting their guidance and protection. Captain Reed received new orders. The Defiant would be placed in standby mode. Military operations were being scaled back as part of the new peace initiative. As Reed walked through the ship that night, running his hand along the metal walls, he couldn't shake his unease. The ship felt alive under his touch, like it shared his suspicion. "They think they're gods," he said to himself, staring out a viewport at the distant Luminar vessel. "And maybe they are, but even gods can make mistakes." He didn't know why he felt this way. The Luminars had done nothing threatening. They had offered only help, only advancement. But something in Reed's gut told him to be careful, to watch, to wait. And Captain Morgan Reed always trusted his gut. 3 months passed. The world had changed faster than anyone thought possible. The Luminars kept their promises. Disease rates dropped to almost zero. Food appeared in places where children once starved. Clean energy powered even the poorest towns. For most people, it was a golden age. Captain Reed still had his ship, but only because he had fought hard to keep it. The Defiant floated in Earth orbit, mostly empty now. Many crew members had chosen to leave, eager to enjoy the new world the Luminars created. Only 30 remained from the original crew of 200. Reed sat in his quarters, looking at news reports. Another space program shut down. Another military base converted to a Harmony Center. Another weapons factory turned into a place that made Luminar technology instead. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Reed said. Dr. Alan Walsh entered. The ship's communication specialist looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. "You look terrible," Reed said. Walsh smiled weakly. "Haven't been sleeping. Too busy learning." Since the Luminars arrived, Walsh had volunteered to study their language. He was now one of the main humans working on translation projects. "Found something interesting," Walsh said, looking around nervously before pulling out a small device. "Been recording Luminar conversations when they don't think I'm listening." Reed raised an eyebrow. "That's dangerous." "Worth it," Walsh insisted. "Listen to this." He played a recording. The sounds were strange, musical clicks and hums. Then Walsh played his translation. Resource extraction timeline moved forward. Earth specimens showing excellent results. Begin phase 2 in 30 days. Reed felt cold. "Specimens. That's us," Walsh said quietly. "Humans. They call us resources when they talk among themselves." Reed stood and paced the small room. "I knew it. I knew they wanted something." "There's more," Walsh continued. "They're collecting data on everything. Our biology, psychology, culture. And they're especially interested in our creativity and adaptability. They keep talking about how valuable we are. Not as friends or equals," Reed muttered. "As resources," Walsh nodded. "And they're shutting down all our defense capabilities. Space programs, military bases, weapons manufacturing. Anything that might let us fight back." Reed looked out his small window at Earth below. From here, it looked peaceful, beautiful. "They're creating a perfect farm," he said. "And we're the crop." That night, Reed couldn't sleep. He walked the empty corridors of his ship. The Defiant had been scheduled for decommissioning next month. It would be dismantled, its parts recycled for better purposes. Reed stopped at the bridge and sat in the captain's chair. He ran his hand over the control panel. This ship was humanity's greatest achievement before the Luminars came. Now it was considered primitive, useless. A plan began to form in his mind. Dangerous, probably impossible. But he had to try. The next day, Reed called the remaining crew together. "I'm not ordering any of you to stay," he told them. "What I'm planning could be seen as treason. If you want to leave, now is the time." No one moved. "Sir," said Wells, his first officer, "we all stayed for a reason. None of us trust these glowing bastards." Reed nodded, grateful. "Then here's what we're going to do. We'll pretend to comply with the decommissioning orders. We'll let the Luminars think we're shutting down systems, but we'll actually be preparing for a fight." "Fight?" someone asked. "How can we fight them? You saw what they did to those missiles." "Not with brute force," Reed agreed. "With intelligence, with human ingenuity. Dr. Walsh will continue gathering information. The rest of us will make this ship ready. We'll modify systems, hide weapons, store supplies." "For what?" Wells asked. Reed's eyes hardened. "For the day when we prove that humans aren't just resources to be harvested. For the day when we show these gods that they made a serious mistake." The crew looked at each other, a mixture of fear and determination on their faces. Then, one by one, they nodded. The plan was set. The Defiant would appear to die, but in secret, it would become humanity's last hope. For weeks, Dr. Walsh spent his days with the Luminars and his nights secretly reporting to Reed. The Defiant crew worked quietly, making the ship appear broken on the outside while strengthening it on the inside. Then one night, Walsh didn't return. "It's been 12 hours, Wells said, standing beside Reed on the bridge. He never stays this long. Reed nodded, his face grim. Track his communicator. Already tried. It's offline. Reed made a quick decision. Prepare a small team. We're going to find him. 4 hours later, Reed and 3 crew members dressed in maintenance uniforms approached the main Luminar facility in North America. Their fake IDs worked. The human security guards barely looked at them. The Luminars had made humans feel so safe that real security seemed unnecessary. Inside, they followed the signal from Walsh's backup tracker, a device he kept hidden in his shoe. The signal led them deep into the building, to areas marked authorized personnel only. "He's through that door," whispered Jones, the team's tech specialist. Reed nodded. "Be ready for anything." They used an access card they had stolen to open the door. Inside was not what they expected. The room was huge, with rows of clear tubes filled with glowing liquid. Each tube contained a sleeping human. "My God," breathed Miller, the team's medic. "What are they doing to these people?" "Looking for something," Reed said, scanning the room. "Walsh must be here somewhere." They moved carefully between the tubes until they found him. Walsh floated in the liquid, eyes closed, with thin wires connected to his head. "Can we get him out?" Reed asked. Miller studied the controls. "I think so, but it might trigger alarms." "Do it," Reed ordered. "We're not leaving him." As Miller worked, Reed looked at the nearest computer screen. It showed brain scans and data streams. He couldn't understand most of it, but one phrase kept appearing. "Memory extraction complete. Prepare for cleansing." "Hurry," Reed urged. The tube drained, and Walsh slumped against the glass. They carefully removed the wires and opened the tube. Walsh's eyes fluttered open. "Captain," he mumbled. "How did you?" Later, Reed said, "Can you walk?" "I think so." An alarm suddenly blared. Red lights flashed throughout the facility. "Time to go," Reed said. They half-carried Walsh toward the exit, but security guards were already blocking their path. Behind the guards stood a Luminar, its skin pulsing with angry red light. "You should not be here," the Luminar said, its voice no longer musical but sharp like breaking glass. "We're just taking our friend for medical attention," Reed said calmly. "This one has learned too much," the Luminar replied. "His mind must be cleansed for the good of all." "Run," Reed whispered to his team. Then, louder, "Now." Jones threw a smoke device. As white clouds filled the corridor, they ran in the opposite direction. Reed had memorized the building layout. There was another exit through the loading docks. Guards chased them, but the team had trained for this. They moved quickly, using the smoke and confusion to their advantage. At the loading docks, they hijacked a supply truck. Reed drove while Miller checked Walsh's condition in the vac. "His vital signs are stable," Miller reported, "but he's disoriented, keeps muttering about the truth, and something called the harvest." They abandoned the truck a mile from their hidden shuttle and continued on foot. The shuttle lifted off just as Luminar ships appeared in the sky above them. Back on the Defiant, Walsh recovered slowly. His eyes were haunted when he finally spoke to Reed. "I found their historical database," he said. "The Luminars have done this before. Hundreds of times. They find developing worlds, pose as benefactors, then harvest everything. Resources, genetic material, even creative potential. They feed on it somehow." "Feed?" Reed asked. Walsh nodded. "They're parasites, not gods. And Earth is just their latest meal." "Did you find anything we can use against them?" Walsh's eyes brightened slightly. "Yes, there are others fighting them. A resistance movement of species they couldn't fully harvest. I found coordinates." Reed looked at the star map Walsh showed him. It was far beyond where any human had traveled. "Can the Defiant make it?" Walsh asked. Reed nodded. "If we push her to her limits. Then we need to go. Now, before they realize what I've taken from their database." Reed made the call. "Prepare for immediate departure. We're leaving the solar system. The Defiant powered up its engines, cloaking systems engaged to hide from luminar sensors. As Earth grew smaller behind them, Reed wondered if he would ever see his home again. The journey took 23 days. The Defiant pushed its engines beyond their limits. Twice they had to stop for emergency repairs. But finally, they reached the coordinates Walsh had found. At first, they saw nothing. Just empty space. "Are you sure this is right?" Reed asked, looking at the star map again. Walsh nodded. "This is exactly where the database said they would be." "Sir," called Jones from the sensor station, "I'm detecting unusual energy readings, like something's there, but hidden." Reed made a decision. "Open a communication channel on all frequencies. Send this message. We are humans from Earth. We seek help against the Luminars. We know the truth about the harvest." For several minutes there was no response. Then suddenly, space itself seemed to ripple, like heat waves over hot pavement. A massive space station appeared where nothing had been before. Some kind of cloaking technology. Wells whispered in awe. "Far beyond what we have." A voice came through their communication system. It wasn't human. The words slightly distorted. "Approach docking bay 4. Come unarmed. Any signs of luminar influence will result in immediate destruction." Reed ordered the ship forward. The Defiant entered a massive docking bay filled with various spacecraft. None looked like luminar vessels, and all appeared battle-damaged in some way. When they exited their ship, they were met by a group of beings. Some looked almost human. Others were completely alien. Scaled skin, multiple limbs, features that seemed impossible. Their leader stepped forward. He was tall and thin with pale blue skin and 4 arms. "I am Commander Tavik of the Resistance. You are the first humans we have met who know the truth." Reed introduced himself and his crew. Tavik led them through the station to a large meeting room. Other aliens watched them pass with curious eyes. "How many are you?" Reed asked. "We are the survivors of 17 worlds," Tavik replied. "All victims of the Luminars. Some of us escaped before the final harvest. Others were deemed unworthy and left behind on the empty husks of our planets." In the meeting room, Reed explained Earth's situation. Tavik nodded grimly. "The pattern is always the same. They arrive, presenting themselves as saviors. They give gifts of technology and knowledge. Then, when your people are dependent and trusting, they begin the harvest." "What exactly is the harvest?" Reed asked. A female alien with golden scales stepped forward. "The Luminars feed on potential, creative energy, innovative thinking, the spark that drives civilization forward. They drain it from species, along with genetic material and natural resources. When they finish, they leave behind empty shells, both the people and the planet." "How do we stop them?" Reed asked. "For years, we thought we couldn't," Tavik said. "But recently, we discovered something." He unveiled a strange weapon, unlike anything Reed had seen before. "The Luminars aren't gods. They're parasites with a physical form, and physical forms can be destroyed." He explained that the Luminars had a weakness. Their bodies couldn't handle certain energy frequencies. The Resistance had developed weapons that exploited this weakness. "Will you share this technology with us?" Reed asked. Tavik studied him carefully. "Why should we trust you? How do we know you're not infected by luminar influence?" Walsh stepped forward. "Test us. Scan us. Do whatever you need to do. But please hurry. Earth doesn't have much time." After thorough examinations and questioning, Tavik agreed. "We will help you, not just with weapons. We will join your fight. The Luminars have taken too much from too many for too long." Over the next week, the Defiant was retrofitted with new technology. The crew trained with Resistance fighters, learning their tactics and strategies. Reed studied the Luminar weaknesses, planning how to exploit them. "Earth is special to them," one alien scientist told Reed. "Your species has extraordinary creative potential. They consider you a prime feeding ground." Then they picked the wrong planet, Reed said firmly. Humans don't surrender easily. On the final day before their departure, Tavik gave Reed a small device. This will call our fleet. When you're ready to strike, activate it. Reed looked around at the gathered aliens, all victims of the same enemy. Thank you. We won't fail. For all our worlds, Tavik said, touching his forehead in a gesture of respect. For all our worlds, Reed repeated, returning the gesture. The Defiant prepared to return to Earth, no longer just a warship but a symbol of hope for 17 devastated civilizations. When the Defiant returned to Earth's solar system, they found a situation worse than they had feared. Massive luminar extraction ships hovered over major cities. Strange machines drilled into the planet's surface. The space around Earth buzzed with luminar vessels. They started the harvest early, Walsh said grimly. They must have realized what we discovered. Reed studied the sensor readings with a tight jaw. How long do we have? Based on these energy readings, they've been at it for about a week, Jones reported. According to the resistance data, we may have only days before irreversible damage occurs. Reed made his decision. Open a secure channel to every military base and government office still operating. Use the old emergency frequencies. What if the luminars intercept it? Wells asked. They already know we're here, Reed replied. We need allies on the ground. Within hours, they had made contact with several military leaders who had grown suspicious of the luminars. General Parker at North American Command was particularly receptive. We've seen strange things, Parker told them over the secure channel. People disappearing, resources being stripped. The luminars say it's all part of the ascension process, but nobody who goes for special processing ever comes back the same. It's not ascension, it's harvesting, Reed said. We have proof, and we have a way to fight back. But we need your help. The plan formed quickly. The Defiant would target the main Luminar command ship while ground forces attacked Luminar facilities worldwide. The Resistance fleet would arrive to deal with the extraction ships. Before they moved, Reed made one more transmission, this one public, to every device on Earth. Walsh had compiled the evidence, historical records of the Luminar's previous harvests, data on their true biology, and footage of empty, destroyed worlds left in their wake. People of Earth, Reed began. I am Captain Morgan Reed of the UES Defiant. Everything you're about to see is true. The Luminars are not gods or benefactors. They are parasites who have done this to countless worlds before ours. The broadcast continued for 10 minutes. Some people refused to believe it. Others had already suspected something was wrong. Civil unrest erupted in cities worldwide as humans realized they had been deceived. The Luminars responded quickly. A massive energy pulse shot toward the Defiant, but the ship dodged, its new enhancements making it faster and more agile. They're targeting our communication systems, Jones called out, trying to cut us off. Let them try, Reed said. The message is already out there. The first battle began in orbit. The Defiant, small against the massive Luminar vessels, darted between them, firing weapons that glowed with strange purple energy. Where the weapons hit, Luminar ships' shields failed. Their perfect surfaces cracked and leaked golden light. On Earth, military forces and civilian volunteers stormed Luminar facilities. They faced resistance not just from the aliens but from humans who still believed the Luminars were saviors. The command ship is moving, Wells reported, heading to high orbit. They're running, Reed said. Activate the resistance beacon, then pursue the command ship. We can't let it escape. As the Defiant chased the larger vessel, space rippled behind them. Dozens of ships appeared. The resistance fleet had arrived. Tavik's voice came through the comm system. We will handle the extraction ships. Complete your mission, Captain Reed. The Defiant closed in on the command ship, which now fired desperately at its much smaller pursuer. One blast hit the Defiant's port side, sending the ship spinning. Direct hit. Wells shouted over the alarms. Engine 3 is down. Reed gripped his chair as the ship stabilized. Keep going. Get us close enough for a precision strike. On the view screen, the command ship grew larger. It was magnificent and terrible, a golden vessel the size of a small city, with ornate spires and glowing sections. At its center was a pulsing light that sensors indicated was its power core. That's our target, Reed said, pointing to the core. All weapons, full power. The Defiant surged forward, taking more hits but staying its course. Earth hung in the background, still beautiful despite the Luminar ships surrounding it. For humanity, Reed whispered, then louder. Fire. The Defiant's weapons released a concentrated beam of purple energy directly at the command ship's core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then cracks spread across the golden surface, light spilling out like liquid sunshine. The Luminar command ship shuddered but didn't explode. Instead, a tractor beam locked onto the Defiant, pulling the smaller vessel toward an open bay. They're bringing us in, Wells shouted. Engines at maximum. Break free. No, Reed said calmly. Let them. Wells stared at his captain. Sir, this is our chance to get inside, Reed explained. We can destroy their control center from within. The crew looked at each other nervously, but no one argued. They had come too far to turn back now. As the Defiant was pulled into the massive golden ship, Reed gathered his team. Wells, Miller, Jones, Walsh, you're with me. The rest of you, defend the ship. If we don't return in 30 minutes, leave without us and rejoin the Resistance fleet. They armed themselves with the special weapons Tavik had given them, rifles that pulsed with the same purple energy their ship's weapons had used. Reed tucked a small device into his pocket, a bomb designed to disrupt the unique energy frequency the Luminars used to power their technology. When the Defiant came to rest inside the bay, they were surprised to find it empty. No guards, no reception committee. They're confident, Walsh said. They still think they're gods. Then let's prove them wrong, Reed replied. They moved through the golden corridors, following Walsh's directions based on the data he had stolen. The inside of the ship was beautiful, with soaring ceilings and walls that seemed alive with flowing patterns of light. But the beauty had a cold, alien quality that made the humans uneasy. They encountered few Luminars. Those they did meet fell quickly to their special weapons. The purple energy didn't just kill. It seemed to unravel the Luminars, turning their glowing forms into nothing more than dust. They never expected anyone to develop weapons that could hurt them, Walsh said as they stepped over the remains of a Luminar. Their arrogance is their weakness. Finally, they'd reached a massive door. According to Walsh's data, beyond it lay the control center. This is it, Reed said. Be ready for anything. The door opened automatically as they approached. Inside was a vast chamber. The walls were transparent, offering a panoramic view of Earth and the battle raging around it. In the center stood a tall Luminar, different from the others. This one's skin pulsed with multiple colors, and it stood nearly 3 meters tall. The High Overseer, Walsh whispered. Around the chamber, humans floated in tubes similar to those they had found Walsh in. But these humans weren't unconscious. Their eyes were open, staring blankly as golden light flowed from their bodies into conduits that fed into the High Overseer. You see now, the High Overseer said, its voice echoing in their minds rather than their ears. This is what we are. This is what we have always been. Parasites, Reed spat. Collectors, the Overseer corrected. We preserve the essence of species, their creativity, their uniqueness. We have saved countless civilizations this way. You've destroyed them, Reed argued, left them as empty shells. The Overseer's skin rippled with something like amusement. Such limited perspective. What is a body compared to the spark of genius, the flame of innovation? We keep what matters. Those aren't yours to take, Reed said, raising his weapon. The Overseer moved with unexpected speed. With a gesture, it sent Reed's team flying backward. Only Reed remained standing, some invisible force holding him in place. "Your species is remarkable," the overseer said, moving closer to Reed. "Such potential, such fire. You will be our greatest acquisition yet." Reed struggled against the invisible hold. "We're not things to be acquired." "Everything is something to be acquired, Captain Reed. That is the way of the universe. The strong consume the weak. We are simply more honest about it." The overseer reached out, its long fingers almost touching Reed's face. "I will enjoy tasting your defiance as it turns to acceptance." Reed couldn't move his arms, couldn't reach his weapon, but he could still talk. "You made one mistake." "Oh." The overseer's tone was indulgent, amused. "You thought you were gods," Reed said. Then he smiled. "And gods don't bleed." With all his strength, Reed jerked his head forward, his forehead crashing into the overseer's reaching hand. The luminar stumbled back, golden liquid seeping from the wound. Its perfect form was damaged, its illusion of divinity shattered. And in that moment of shock, Reed broke free. Reed lunged for his weapon as the overseer howled in rage. The sound shattered glass panels throughout the chamber. The invisible force holding Reed's team disappeared, and they scrambled to their feet, weapons ready. "Free the humans," Reed shouted, firing his weapon at the overseer. The purple beam struck the tall luminar in the chest. Golden cracks spread across its body, but it didn't disintegrate like the others had. The high overseer was stronger. "You cannot defeat me," it snarled, voice no longer beautiful, but harsh and grating. "I have consumed the essence of 1,000 worlds." Wells and Miller rushed to the tubes, searching for release mechanisms while Jones covered them. Walsh joined Reed in facing the overseer. The luminar leader raised its arms. The ship itself seemed to respond, metal panels tearing free and flying toward the humans like deadly projectiles. Reed and Walsh dove for cover. "The bomb," Walsh shouted. "Use it now." Reed reached into his pocket for the device Tavik had given him. It was small, no bigger than his palm, with a simple activation switch. But before he could press it, the overseer gestured again. Pain exploded in Reed's mind. Images of worlds burning, species dying, endless cycles of harvest and destruction. "See what we are," the overseer's voice echoed in his thoughts. "See what we have always been. You cannot stop the inevitable." Reed fell to his knees, the bomb still clutched in his hand. Through blurred vision, he saw his crew facing similar pain. Wells had managed to open one tube, a dazed human falling out into his arms before Wells collapsed too. Only the ship itself seemed immune to the mental assault. And in that moment, Reed had an idea. With tremendous effort, he activated his communicator. Defiant, he gasped. "Initiate self-destruct sequence." Authorization read Alpha 79. The ship's computer responded immediately. Self-destruct sequence initiated. 5 minutes to detonation. The overseer's mental attack faltered. "You would destroy yourself. For what purpose?" Reed smiled through the pain. "To prove you wrong." With the overseer distracted, Walsh fired his weapon again. This time the beam struck the luminar's head, sending it staggering backward. Reed forced himself to his feet. "The Defiant is more than a ship," he told the wounded overseer. "It's a symbol of what humans will do to remain free." He pressed the activation switch on the bomb and hurled it toward the center of the room, where conduits from all the human tubes converged. "No!" the overseer screamed, lunging for the device. Too late. The bomb detonated with a silent pulse of purple energy. The effect was immediate. All around the chamber, the golden light flowing from the captured humans reversed direction. Instead of being drained away, their essence flowed back into their bodies. Their eyes cleared, awareness returning. The overseer writhed in agony as its stolen power was torn away. Its perfect form began to shrivel, revealing something underneath that was ancient and withered. "What have you done?" it gasped. "Set them free," Reed answered simply. Throughout the massive ship, systems began to fail. Lights flickered. Gravity wavered. The battle outside continued, but the command ship was dying from within. 4 minutes to self-destruct, the Defiant's computer announced. Time to go, Reed told his team. Together, they helped the freed humans, many still weak and confused. What about the others? Walsh asked, pointing to tubes they hadn't opened yet. The disruption pulse will free them all, Reed said, but we need to get them to escape pods. They worked quickly, directing the rescued humans toward emergency evacuation points. News spread through the ship. The Luminars could be hurt, could be killed, could bleed. The Overseer, now a fraction of its former glory, watched from the control center floor. You have doomed yourselves, it said weakly. Without our guidance, you will destroy yourselves. Reed paused at the door. Maybe, but we'll do it as free people making our own choices. That's what you never understood. With 1 minute remaining, Reed and his team reached the Defiant. The ship was already humming with power, ready for emergency departure. All rescued humans are in escape pods, Wells reported. Launching now. Small pods ejected from the command ship, heading toward Earth where the battle was turning. Resistance ships and human forces were overwhelming the leaderless Luminar fleet. Let's go home, Reed said. The Defiant broke free from the dying command ship, accelerating away just as the self-destruct sequence completed. The explosion was magnificent, a burst of golden light that faded to reveal the stars beyond. As they flew toward Earth, Reed looked back at where the Luminar command ship had been. For beings that had thought themselves gods, their end had been surprisingly mortal. Humanity had survived. The price had been high, but they remained free. And in the stars beyond, 17 other species now had hope that their worlds could someday be reclaimed. The Defiant, scared but unbroken, carried them home.